So this video is the part 2 of 2 videos regarding how to build your roadmap in 9 steps. So in the previous video, we covered why we need to have a roadmap for your transformation. Second step was, or is, what is the starting point that you have to assess appropriately within your company and understand exactly where you are to know where you're going. And step 3 is, what is the cash cow sequence you have in your company that can really be improved, and you can see the gaps, you can see the interaction, you can see what you should do to make that better and get more revenues, better customer satisfaction, whatever you want to achieve, but you need to focus on this high value interaction within your organization. And the fourth step of part 1 was meet your people. I mean, you need to know exactly what do they do every day to accomplish their work. You could find some gems in there that you'll be surprised that they do. They do manually, they do some manipulations that it's a waste of time, but it's great value for the customers. So you can find gaps on how we can automate this, how we can help those nice employees who are doing the extra mile to satisfy your customers, how we can help them to do even a better job. So those are the four steps of the part 1 that it's in the previous video with the same title, but part 1 as a suffix. So now, in this video, we'll focus on the sequence mapping of this high value interaction at step 3. We're going to go to how to create this famous plan from those from the previous elements from 1 to 5, and why we should measure progress, why we should do that early in the process to know exactly what to measure in terms of progress and success. And very critical, I'm going to show you and talk to you about a few stats about you need to get the management team on board. If it's you need to do it right. If you're a director of IT and you have a management team above you, you need to get them engaged ASAP and in the right way. And the final step is start your journey. So how to kick off your project, how to communicate that. So those are the 5 steps of part 2 that we're going to go through today. So step number 5. So step 1 of part 2. So sequence mapping. So what does that mean? So there is some hands-on work in this. It's not easy to do. It's not easy for everybody, but it's really to take your cash cow process that you define, you found out in step 3, and you need to divide it in small steps. You need to go deeper and go down the routes about, okay, what's happening in that cash cow process from quote to cash, from beginning until the end. And that sequence is going to be key to find out gaps and inefficacies, as I said in previous steps. So let's take an example. Let's take like a visitor fills a form to buy an online course. So maybe it's not your business. It's probably not your business for most of you, but that's something that you'll understand anyway. So I have a sequence here. So the visitor surfs on your website or on the website. He finds, or he or she finds a course that he wants to purchase. So he click on the form, on a call to action form, fills up the form with payment information, click on submit. The sales team will receive a notification. So all these steps, they need to be mapped out. So again, if I start back, visitor surf, you draw like a square with visitors surfs on the website, click on the form. That's step 2. Step 3, fills the form. Step 4, click on submit. All those details, you need to map them out. This is how you understand it. You need to own it. You need to grasp all the details of that sequence. And you understand why once you do that. So try it with yourself. We don't really care about how you do it, but so let's do it. So again, if I go back, after clicking submit, the sales team receive a notification by email. The visitor gets an email to validate the email address, typical these days, clicks on the call to action button in the email to confirm the email. The tool that you use sends back an email to the potential customer to validate, to say, okay, your email is validated. Now you can log in and access your online course. And you can add all these things that, okay, 2 days later, the tool that you have is going to send an email. So how was your experience? How was this? How was that? So you can build different things, but just define all the steps that you have right now. Some of these steps can be on paper done by somebody. It could be in a tool. It could be in on call without writing anything down. So, which is another issue. But I mean, you should just grasp everything, all the steps, and from that, you map it. And we don't really care about how you map it. It could be like a pen and a piece of paper. It could be in OneNote, it could be in Visio, it could be in Draw.io, any open source software that you want to use. As long as you map it, it could be in writing only, but you need to understand what is a sequence, who does what, when, what is the input, what is the output. So all these things that need to be mapped out on the best of your knowledge. It doesn't have to be perfect. Don't go crazy about it, but just doing this exercise, you'll figure out a lot of things. And the objective is really for you to see that, okay, I didn't know about this. I didn't know that gap. I didn't know this. So by looking at it this way, you'll be able to see what are the gaps and the inefficacies in that process. And when you do that, you need to look at what is the visitor experience in that process, because now it's mapped out. You can see what they have to go through in terms of visitors, but also internally, you'll see what your employees are doing in that process. And this is where you can focus on, okay, how I can improve the visitors experience and / customer experience eventually. They are visitors at first and customers after. And internally, what your employees have to do. Do they need to take a note on the side of their computer and just put the note, post it to the neighbor, so that's kind of the handoff you have? Is there another way to improve that? Is there a better way? Can you automate? Can you semi-automate all these things? So again, it's all these things that are going to be very helpful to understand to improve the process. So it's somewhat some business intelligence. You need to understand that to improve it. Step 6. Now it's a time to create your plan. Not an easy task. Like the mapping was not easy, creating your plan is not easy, but it is so beneficial to do. So take the time to think about it. I'm going to give you some example here. So from those gaps and inefficacies that you found out in the previous step, you, and also keeping the focus on the core sequence that we also did in the previous steps, like the high or highest core interaction or highest value interaction you have in your organization. So this is the core sequence, but when you look at this core sequence, you'll find out that you have other smaller interactions or sequences around the core sequence. So it means that many things or many people are involved in that core sequence. It's not like a straight line. You'll see some things left and right being useful to that process and people being involved. It could be like 5 people, 6 people overall being involved before you get to the cash collection at the end. So in these projects, I mean, and all these things will become project in your plan. So improving this, improving that, changing this, adding this tool. So just around that, you can have like multiple projects. It won't be one project with all things in one bucket. You need to subdivide that in multiple smaller projects. By having smaller projects, you can absorb them, you can understand them, you can have a control on each project instead of having the big bucket and being totally overwhelmed. So that's not the goal. The goal is really to keep the control on each small projects. And these projects, they could be like adding or changing a tool that you already have that is not powerful enough, doesn't do the job to fill up the gaps that you found out in previous steps. It could be a project of hiring an expert in something specific because you realize that one skill was really missing. So you can hire somebody to be in your staff or somebody external. So if it is for temporary services, go outside. If it is for long-term, hire that person to work with you, with your team, close to you. And it could be also, like example, remodeling your website because the sequence that you find on a website doesn't make sense. It's not a good visitor's experience, so that could be one of the projects. Also, you could find out that in your process there is some cybersecurity issue, and this way you will need to find a partner in cybersecurity or send your IT guys onto some cybersecurity courses. All these things that are going to be useful to know to fill up the gaps. Another type of projects could be like you build a knowledge base, because now your staff, they have been trained on the new tool, they know how to use it, they have been involved in helping you to build and configure that tool. But eventually they could forget a few things, so having a knowledge base could be useful. And also, if you have new people being hired over time, they can look at this knowledge base and bring that to at their service, so they can access that with videos, tutorials, and all these things. So this way, they are always training themselves on the tools, so they keep improving it, and they are not lost if something happens. So that could be one of the projects. So there's something we can even bring into a video. But most of the time, again, it won't be only one project. That's going to be a good mix of all these projects. And when you are doing these projects, you need to prioritize these projects. You need to find the best sequence of these projects. And even some of the projects are going to be big enough that you have to think about, can we implement it in phases? Like having a minimum viable product at first, and after that, incrementally add a few things, a few features, a few things. So instead of going all in with that new tool with all the bells and whistles, you should find a way to implement it and launch it in phases, and prepare those phases within your plan. And also, when you're going through your project planning or your plan creation, once you've worked on a project, people have been like trained, they need to adapt. They could resist to the changes. They need to adapt to everything. So from that, at the end, they can be tired and they can be a bit overwhelmed. They need time to absorb what happened and what's happening, because those are big changes. So you need to plan gaps between projects as well. I know that as entrepreneurs, we want to go fast, we want to go speedy, we want to have everything ready yesterday. But you need to think about the people again, and you need to make sure that you are keeping some or adding some time for them to absorb these things. They're going to thank you for that, and they'll be ready for a next project. So don't go too fast. Again, this is a journey. Don't go too fast. Plan for the long term. Play the long game. So you need to think about, okay, that's going to be later. And if you do your projects or your project one at a time right, you're going to end up in having a transformed company. But if you try to put everything in one bucket, that won't work. Another key piece into a transformation is training of the staff, and training of the staff. So train your people. Make sure that they know how to use the tool. You don't want them to revert back to the previous tool. You don't want them to be lost in between. The tool is not available, the previous tool is not available anymore, and the new tool is not, they don't know how to use that. So how they can serve the customers well, you could be stuck. So make sure that they are well trained before making the transition, not at the transition, but before the transition. And again, take their feedback. It's very, very, very important to get their feedback. So you may be wondering how a roadmap could look like. So that's an example. This is an example of a roadmap that could look like. So in that case, on the left side, those are the mix of projects. And within each project, we have this swim lane, and each project has their own steps, phases along the way, and everything has to be in sync. You cannot like having all the projects starting on the same day or the same month and having everybody. You need to make sure that the staff is available for it, and there is some time to absorb and phases and all these things. So this one is like, I would say, not, it's a typical one, but it doesn't have to be this way. And you can keep it simple, and you have timelines, and you need to be agile. You need to be ready to extend a bit depending on your timeline and your milestones, but try to not rushing it too much, making sure it's going to be a success for each project and phases. This way, people will appreciate that. You're going to show leadership. And the next project you're going to kickstart, they will follow you and they will like you because they know you're going to be patient with them. You're going to take care of them. And this is why we're saying that the people are making the difference. The people are making the transformation, not the technology. Step number 7, measure your progress and success. You can say how and why I would measure the progress and the success while I'm creating the plan. Simple answer, you need to plan what you're going to measure. If you don't know what you need to measure in 6 months, 1 year, 2 years to see the progress and the success of your transformation, I mean, that doesn't make sense. So you need to know it now, and you can add more numbers, more ways of evaluating your progress and success. But you need to find the main critical numbers or quantitative or qualitative comments and elements to know what's happening. You need to know that now in order to plan it. And what I mean by this is, if, example, you want to know the number of let's say sales or number of subscribers and all these things, and you use your own platform. So you don't have the analytics example within the program. Most of them, they have their analytics example. You don't have it. You need to create this. You need to find a way to gather the number of whatever in your plan. You need to do it in your tool, part of your plan, to make sure that you're gathering this information all along the way. So in 6 months down the road, when you look back and say, oh, okay, I'm glad I put this new criteria within the process, because it would have been very difficult to extract the information backward if you don't record it on day one. So very important to do it early. And in terms of, it could be quantitative, but it could be like with no numbers. I mean, quantitative are very useful. We're used to that. Could be adoption rate with percentages, time saving, if you can measure it before and after, more sales, more profits, or less if something happens wrong, so etc. So you can have all these things for the quantitative criteria you can put in place. And also in terms of the ones that are not quantifiable, customer appreciation. So yes, you can send surveys and get some data, but the comments are also important. The comments, they have no numbers in there. That's good that you're listening to those customers, obviously. Employees appreciation as well. And comments, example comments of the visitors on your website. So all these things, I mean, they don't have any numbers, but they are very useful in terms of how you can improve the customer experience, the visitors' experience, employees' experience. So this is why you need to do that early. So think about it, plan for it, put the ways of gathering this information as early as possible in your transformation. So step number 8, get management stakeholders on board with your transformation. So if you are or are not management within your company, whatever, you need to support it. They need to support it very, very well. So 2 statistics that are scary. Overall, 70% of transformation fail overall, and 75% of those failures are the management team didn't support the transformation well enough. In a sense that usually management, they want this transformation to be done. They don't want to go through it. They just want to make it happen. They want to go a bit too quickly, and they don't communicate the information. They don't even do certain things themselves. They are a bit resistant to change, while at the same time saying, I want that to be done, but I don't want to be the one doing it. So that's kind of weird. So you have to make sure that they're really, really on board. So for staff meetings, for when you have some quick wins, make sure that management is involved and they are sharing their appreciation of the work, of the team, of the success of all these things. That's very, very important. So make sure that they are on board, make sure that they know the plan, they like the plan, they support the plan, and they are aware that it's going to be a journey as well. So don't neglect that step. This is very, very, very important. And make sure that you are communicating with them very well, and they do as well, and help them to communicate to the staff to make sure that your project is well presented, but the importance of it is also published and posted and shared with all the employees. So step number 9, start your DT, your digital transformation journey. So that's a step. It's the kickoff of the project itself. You have all the elements, you have your plan, you have the management team on board, you met your people, you have your progress key indicators, your starting point, all the elements that we went through from 1 to 8. Now make it official. Make sure that the employees are aware that you as a company will go through that journey. And again, this is a journey. So they must know it. They must feel it is started. So a change or changes are happening. And they need to know the why you, the company, are doing it. Because you need them, you need their inputs, you need their feedback. They'll be consulted, so they need to be aware. So don't do that like a submarine under the water and hoping that everything is going to go well. You need to do that with them. Plan to communicate the progress. Find out the frequency of communication. Maybe you have a staff meeting once a month, once every 2 months. Plan like a topic of digital transformation. You should put it there. Let them know that it won't be easy. We'll have some highs and lows, some challenges. You need them to be on board with you when you go through the successes, but also the challenges. And again, make sure you manage their expectations on many fronts. Again, the fronts of journey versus single project and punctual, being final, and certain things that perhaps sometimes you need to make some compromises on certain things, but overall you are winning, you're getting the benefits of it. So focus on that, manage expectations, and kick off the project as soon as you're ready. So now let's summarize those 9 steps. So we went through why the DT, the Digital Transformation Roadmap, is key. And this why is used in the communication to staff, communication to leaders, to management, to the board, if you have a board. So all these things are very important. This is the first step you have to do. Secondly, assess your company to know where you are right now. This is the only way you know what are the gaps between now and the future that you're looking for. So that assessment is key, and make it thorough to make sure that you really understand where you are as a company and what's missing and how you can fill those gaps. And by doing it, step number 2, you should be able to easily find out what is your cash cow process. Maybe you already know it, but make sure that you really are sure this is the one. And you can think about the future ones as well. But again, don't go too big too quickly. That can be overwhelming for your first IT roadmap planning. Okay, and step number 4, meet your people, discuss with your people, sit with your people, make sure you're gathering the feedback, the inputs, the details that you're not aware of, to make sure that you are helping them eventually with the new processes, the new tools, the new ways of doing this. And again, by involving them as soon as possible, you are going to get a better adoption rate, and you're going to improve the way they work, and the resistance to change is going to be a lot lower. So all these things are key elements. So again, it's not about technology. It's about all those psychological aspects in bringing these new things. So human beings are human beings. You need to account for that. Step number 5 is directly related to step number 3. You found out your highest value interaction. You need to map it. Again, not an easy step, but you need to map it in detail. And by doing this, you will understand a lot of stuff during that process. That's going to help you to understand your entire business. You'll see how many interactions and exchanges and hands-off and all these things. That's going to be crazy. And you'll find on gaps right there that even before starting your transformation, you'll be able to make some improvements on the next day just by showing and seeing a few things that they don't really make sense because they are so manual that you must or you will find a way to improve, example, that small thing that is going to be a quick win. Step number 6, you're ready to create your plan. Again, all the things before and focusing on the highest value interaction is going to help you to create a basic but a good plan where you focus on where you can make a difference, where that plan can make a difference. And that's going to be very important as well to sell it, because you're going to create a plan that will improve the cash cow process, which is already doing okay, but you can improve that even better. And after that, that could be like a copy paste for other processes or other products and services that you bring on that are a bit different than the cash cow in terms of process. So you can reuse that because you have worked at improving the cash cow one and you got a quick win or a big win, depending on the importance of your cash cow process. So yeah, create your plan. And as we discussed, it's a mix of multiple projects. So you need to make that logical in terms of the sequence. And again, taking care of having some time to absorb the new projects and having phases within each of these projects and having these projects align that it makes sense to do one thing before another one. Even if you are in a rush of doing a second one, perhaps you need to put the foundation with the project number 1 before project number 2. So this is something that needs to be considered seriously when and while you're building your roadmap. Step number 7, measure, prepare the KPI, key progress indicator, if you want, or any other ways of looking at it. Make sure that you're setting them up right at the beginning, so later on you'll be able to rely on them. Sometimes in the first days they don't really make sense because it's too early, but eventually those key performance indicators are going to make a good business intelligence for you to make better decisions and make further improvements and keep improving within your transformation journey on that process and maybe other processes that you're going to implement eventually. Number 8, get management on board. Why? Failures are because management is not well involved. They say they are, but they are not. They don't communicate well. They don't own the projects, and the employees are feeding it, and they know it, and say, okay, if the boss doesn't do it, why I would do that? I don't do it. So resistance to change at the maximum because the boss doesn't do it. So get the bosses, and if it's you, show the example, show that you want this thing to happen, and people will follow because you are the leader and or they are the leader. So step number 9, start it, communicate well, having a plan to communicate with them, the frequency of planning, make it clear, manage expectations, all these things around starting your journey. This is really, really critical. On the final words of these 2 videos regarding how to create your roadmap in 9 steps, I totally realize that these steps are for a smaller plan, but if you want to build bigger plan, you need to have more details in each of these steps. So I think I wanted to give you like an overview that for some of you, you can navigate through this and build a very nice plan easily. For others, that could be a bit more difficult for certain steps in there. So my goal is to add more videos around each of these steps eventually. So if you have any questions or you want me to go through a few things in videos or in my blog, feel free to comment in the YouTube here. And hopefully you can also subscribe to my channel and enable the bell for you to have notifications when I generate a new video. And but again, I'm very interested in getting your comments and provide what you need for your company.